The vast chamber of the Zorth War Council was built inside a mountain of living crystal. Light from alien suns filtered through the transparent walls, turning every reflection into fire. Around a circular table sat the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, the commanders, admirals, and scientists of the Zorth Dominion, a species famous for its cold logic and endless wars. Every breath in that hall carried tension. The war with humanity had dragged on for 9 long years. Whole planets had burned. Millions of soldiers had fallen. No one expected mercy anymore. To the Zorth, humans were clever beasts, violent, emotional, unpredictable. But that day, something happened that none of them could explain. At the center of the table floated a holographic screen, glowing blue and trembling slightly. It showed a scene from a devastated battlefield, a gray sky smoking ruins, the remains of a city shattered by orbital fire. The ground was black with ash and blood, and in that ruin, a single human figure knelt. The intelligence officer who brought the recording trembled as he spoke. "Captured from the third front of Rax 5, he said. "Our surveillance drones recorded this only 12 hours ago." Arch-Commander Vareth, the oldest and most feared leader among them, leaned forward. His scaled fingers dug into the arm of his chair. "Play it." The recording came to life. Wind howled. A soldier in a torn uniform, clearly human, moved carefully among the ruins. His name tag flashed once on his armor. Admiral Marcus Hale, the highest-ranking officer of the Human Federation fleet in that sector. He was supposed to be the enemy. A destroyer of Zorth colonies, a strategist who once turned an entire moon into a trap to defeat them. Yet what he did next made the entire chamber freeze. Marcus knelt beside a pile of rubble. He pushed away a cracked beam with shaking hands and revealed a small creature, one of the Zorth cubs. Its fur was matted with dirt and blood. Its tiny chest moved weakly. Around it, 2 more cubs whimpered, clutching each other, eyes glowing faintly in fear. Every Zorth in that room recognized the cubs' markings, the royal nursery of Rax Phi. These children were the bloodline of their own generals. They had been lost during the bombing weeks earlier. Everyone believed they were dead, but there they were, alive, crying, and helpless. And the human admiral, their enemy, reached out slowly, offering them his water flask. The council members leaned closer. Their scales rustled softly. Not a sound escaped anyone's throat. Marcus poured the water carefully into a tiny metal lid, then held it near the cub's mouth. The smallest one licked it weakly. Then the admiral opened his emergency ration pack and broke it into pieces. The human soldier removed his helmet, letting the cub see his face. His expression wasn't cold. It wasn't triumphant, it was gentle. He smiled faintly. "Easy there. You're safe now," he whispered. The cubs didn't understand the words, but they felt the tone. One crawled forward and placed its little clawed hand on his glove. Marcus froze for a second, then smiled again and wrapped his coat around them to keep them warm. The recording zoomed out. The battlefield around him was silent except for distant thunder. Smoke curled into the sky. The admiral's lieutenant appeared, his voice nervous. "Sir, with respect, this is enemy territory. We can't stay here. The drones are still active." "I know," Marcus said quietly, "but look at them. They're starving. Command won't like this, sir." Marcus glanced up, eyes tired but firm. "Command can court-martial me later." "These are children." The Zorth Council chamber erupted into murmurs. Dozens of voices clashed in disbelief. "Impossible. It's a trick. No human would touch our young without killing them." The intelligence officer raised both hands. "The footage has been verified. No editing. No forgery. The drone's data shows full authenticity." The voices died one by one. Arch-Commander Vareth stood. His massive frame cast a long shadow across the glowing floor. "Then tell me," he said slowly, "why would an enemy feed our cubs?" No one answered. Even the whisper of the cooling system seemed loud. Another commander, Admiral Tern, hissed. "Perhaps he seeks propaganda. Humans love their moral displays." "But he was alone," replied another. "No camera crew. No witnesses, except the drones he didn't know about. What advantage could that bring him?" The question hung heavy in the air. Vareth watched the hologram again. The human admiral was now sitting cross-legged, letting one cub rest on his lap. The small creature had fallen asleep, its head pressed against Marcus's chest. The human's expression had softened. a face of a man who had seen too much death and wanted for once to protect something. Vareth clenched his jaw. "Turn it off." The hologram flickered and vanished. The blue light in the room dimmed. For several seconds, no one spoke. The silence was deeper than before, as if the walls themselves waited to hear what would happen next. At last, Admiral Zora, one of the younger members, broke the stillness. "All my life," she said softly, "I was told that humans were monsters, that they had no heart, only hunger for power. But what I saw—" She paused, looking around at her peers. "What I saw was a soldier with tears in his eyes." "Blasphemy," growled General Karn. "The human must have planned it. They are masters of deception. That compassion is fake." Zora's voice hardened. "Maybe, but maybe not. What if we've been wrong?" Vareth turned to her, eyes narrow. "Wrong? After all the blood they've spilled? After they burned our fleets?" Zora met his gaze. "And we did the same. Tell me, Commander, when did we become so certain that none of them could feel pain like ours?" Her words hit the room like a weapon. The council members shifted uneasily. For generations they had believed their cause righteous, their war holy. The thought that their enemy might share the same emotions, the same compassion, that was dangerous. It could break the discipline that held their empire together. But the image of the human admiral feeding the cubs stayed in their minds. No argument could erase it. General Karn slammed his fist on the table. "We must erase that footage. If our soldiers see it, they will hesitate in battle." Zora's tone turned sharp. "Or maybe hesitation is what we need." Vareth's glare silenced both. "Enough. The council will not crumble over one act of madness." He looked to the intelligence officer. "Seal the recording. Only this council will know of it." The officer hesitated. "Sir, with respect, it's already spreading through the relay networks. The human fleets might have seen it too." Vareth's expression darkened. "Then they will use it to weaken us," Zora whispered under her breath. "Or to remind us we are still alive." No one responded. Vareth straightened his cloak. "This meeting is over. Until further notice, no decision shall be made about the Rax Fee sector." Dismissed. The council members rose from their seats in silence, each lost in thought. Some left quickly, their steps echoing in the long corridors. Others lingered, glancing once more at the dimmed hologram projector, as if hoping the image would come back to prove it was all a dream. But the image remained burned into their minds. A human, kneeling in the ruins, feeding the children of his enemies. Far away, on the same battlefield, Admiral Marcus sat beside the cubs as night fell. The wind was cold. He pulled his coat tighter around the smallest one. The child stirred, opened its glowing eyes, and looked up at him. He smiled faintly. "It's okay, sleep. No one will hurt you now." Above them, the sky shimmered with distant explosions from other fronts of the war. But for a brief moment in that small corner of the galaxy, the war felt far away. There was only the sound of breathing, and human and alien, together in fragile peace. Marcus looked at the cubs and then at the stars. His thoughts drifted to his own son back on Earth. "Maybe one day," he whispered, "we'll all stop fighting." The words were carried away by the wind. The drones that watched him recorded everything, every gesture, every quiet word, and transmitted it to both armies. Within hours, millions would see it. Back in the council chamber, Vareth stood alone after everyone had gone. The old commander stared at the empty table. The glow of the projector reflected in his tired eyes. He had fought humans for 40 years. He had ordered fleets to destroy entire cities without blinking. Yet the image of the human admiral feeding those cubs refused to leave him. He whispered to himself, "Maybe that is why they are dangerous. Because they care." He turned off the lights and left the chamber in silence. But the silence did not last. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread, on warships, in trenches, and underground shelters. Soldiers of both sides asked the same question. Is it true? And deep in their hearts, many of them hoped it was. Because if a human admiral could feed enemy children, maybe there was still something worth saving in the universe. The morning after the bombing of Rax 5 was gray and silent. Thick smoke still hung over the ruins, and the smell of burned stone clung to the air. Admiral Marcus Hale woke with a start. The cubs were still curled against him, hidden beneath his coat. Their small breaths were weak but steady. He looked around. The sky was broken by streaks of fire from falling debris. What had once been a proud alien city was now nothing but shattered walls and broken towers. His lieutenant, Commander Raiden, crouched beside him. "Sir," he whispered, "scout drones spotted movement east of here. Probably Zorth search patrols." Marcus nodded slowly, his voice low. "Then we move before they find us." He lifted the smallest cub, wrapping it tighter in his coat. The other two clung to his arm, unwilling to let go. Raiden frowned. "Sir, with all respect, what are we doing?" "These are enemy children." Marcus glanced at him. "They're children. That's all I see." The lieutenant hesitated, jaw tight. "Command will court-martial you for this." Marcus smiled faintly. "Then I'll make sure they spell my name right in the report." They moved quietly through the rubble, the sun hidden behind thick clouds. Every step crunched on shattered glass and bone. Marcus carried one cub while the others followed, stumbling on trembling legs. He led them into a half-collapsed tunnel, a metro station that had survived the bombardment. Inside, the air was cold but calm. He found a cracked bench and set the cubs down. Then he took out his last 2 ration bars. Without hesitation, he broke them into small pieces and placed them in front of each child. The cubs sniffed the food suspiciously, their small claws twitching. One finally bit into it, and for the first time Marcus saw them relax. He sat down against the wall, exhausted. The sound of their soft chewing filled the empty station. Raiden stood guard at the tunnel entrance. "Sir," he said quietly, "you've fought these creatures for years. You've seen what they did to our colonies. Why help them?" Marcus looked up at the dark ceiling. "Because someone has to stop this cycle, Raiden. Someone has to remember who we were before the war made us monsters." He reached into his armor and pulled out a small, bent photograph. It showed a woman with gentle eyes holding a baby boy. "My wife and son. They died in the first Zorth strike." Raiden froze. "I didn't know." Marcus's voice softened. "I could have spent my life hating them. But hate didn't bring my family back. It just made me lose more of myself." He turned toward the cubs, his eyes wet. "Look at them. They didn't start this war. They were born into it, same as my son was." Raiden said nothing. From the shadows, the smallest cub crawled forward and offered Marcus a tiny piece of the ration bar. Its glowing eyes blinked innocently. Marcus smiled, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, little one," he whispered. That single moment, a human and an alien child sharing food in the ruins, was recorded by a hidden drone hovering near the station ceiling. The image would later travel through dozens of satellites, reaching both the Human Federation and the Zorth Dominion. But Marcus didn't know. He was too busy trying to keep them alive. Hours later, the storm outside grew worse. The wind howled through broken tunnels. Marcus started a small emergency fire using the remains of a heat cell. The orange light danced over the cracked walls, making the cubs look almost human in their sleep. He whispered to Raiden, "You should rest." Raiden shook his head. "I can't, sir. You're risking your career, maybe your life, for them, and you're calm. I don't understand how." Marcus chuckled quietly. "Calm? No, Raiden. I'm terrified. But I'd rather be afraid for the right reason than proud for the wrong one." The fire crackled softly. One cub whimpered in its sleep. Marcus reached over and gently rubbed its head until it settled down again. His mind wandered. He remembered his first day as an officer, the speeches about honor, duty, and victory. None of them mentioned compassion. None said that mercy could be strength. But maybe that was what the universe had forgotten. He looked down at the cubs again. They're not enemies, he thought. They're proof that the line between us and them was drawn by people who never saw this moment. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Zorth War Council reconvened. The footage of Marcus had spread beyond containment. Dozens of commanders had already seen it. Soldiers whispered about it in mess halls. Some cursed his name, calling it manipulation. Others watched the recording in silence, unable to look away. In the council chamber, Admiral Zora stood at the center. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "You all saw it. The human could have killed the cubs. Instead, he shared his food. Does that look like a creature without soul?" General Karn slammed his clawed hand on the table. "He's acting. You think this soft-hearted fool represents all humans?" "They burned our planets!" Zora met his gaze. "And we burned theirs." The chamber went silent again. Arch-Commander Vareth rose slowly. His voice was deep and rough. "Enough. We will not fall to weakness because one human chose pity. Zora turned toward him. Weakness. Commander, when did kindness become weakness? Her question echoed through the chamber. None of the hardened soldiers could answer it. Vareth growled. Compassion has no place in war. Mercy is how empires die. Zora stepped closer, unafraid.
Or how they survive. The tension in the room grew thick.
For the first time, the council wasn't united. A crack had opened in their iron certainty, and it was growing. Outside the chamber, thousands of Zorth citizens were already watching the leaked footage. Mothers wept. Soldiers hesitated. For the first time, they wondered what kind of beings they had become. Back in the ruins of Rax 5, Marcus and Raiden were trying to find a signal to call for extraction. Raiden adjusted his comm link. Signal's dead. The satellites above must have been destroyed. Marcus sighed. Then we stay here until command finds us. Keep the kids warm. He crouched beside the cubs. One of them was coughing. Marcus touched its forehead and it was burning with fever. He quickly took out a med kit, crushed a dissolvable antibiotic and mixed it into water. He held the small cup near the cub's mouth. The little creature looked up at him with confusion and fear. Marcus smiled gently. It's medicine. It'll help you. The cub hesitated, then drank. Moments later, its breathing slowed. Marcus exhaled in relief. He leaned back against the cold wall, closing his eyes. He felt the weight of the universe pressing down on him. Billions of lives, billions of choices. For years, every decision had been about tactics and targets. But this moment was simple. Human. Raiden watched silently, then said in a low voice, Sir, you might have just ended this war in a way no weapon ever could. Marcus smiled faintly, eyes still closed. If feeding children ends a war, Raiden, then maybe that's the only kind of victory that matters. In orbit above the planet, Human Fleet Command finally received the feed from Marcus's body camera. They saw everything. The ruined city, the cubs, the firelight, the compassion. In the command center, officers exchanged shocked looks. One admiral muttered, "What is he doing? This could ruin our propaganda." But the Supreme Commander, an old woman named Aisha Ven, watched the recording quietly. When it ended, she simply said, "Maybe it will save us instead." She turned to her staff. "No one touches this footage. Let it spread." Back on Rax 5, the day slowly faded into night again. Marcus sat near the fire, staring into the flames. The smallest cub woke and climbed into his lap. Its fur glowed faintly in the light. Marcus hesitated, then placed his gloved hand gently on its head. The cub made a soft purring sound, something like trust. Marcus smiled. "You'll be all right." He didn't notice that the drone above was still recording. It caught his face in full, not the face of a soldier but of a father. He whispered to himself, "Maybe my son will grow up in a world where this means something." Raiden looked at him, puzzled. "Sir?" Marcus shook his head. "Nothing, just hope." They sat in silence for a while. The stars above flickered through cracks in the ceiling. Somewhere far away, the war still raged. Ships clashing, soldiers dying. But down here, in this small hidden place, the universe felt different. It felt human. In the council chamber, Zora replayed the footage again and again. Every time she watched it, something inside her shifted. She turned to Vareth. "You said mercy has no place in war. But tell me, what is the point of victory if we forget why we fight?" Vareth didn't answer. His old eyes looked tired. Zora whispered, "I saw a human feed our cubs, and for the first time in my life I felt ashamed of what we've become." Vareth's claws tightened. He wanted to argue, to call her naive, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he remembered his own daughter, who had died in the first battle of Orion. He remembered her small hands, her laughter. He sighed deeply. "Perhaps. We've been fighting ghosts." Zora nodded. "Then maybe it's time to stop." As the night deepened on Rax 5, Marcus finally drifted to sleep beside the cubs. The fire burned low, casting long shadows. The wind outside had calmed. In the darkness, one cub stirred and reached out its tiny claw to touch Marcus's hand. The human didn't move, but his fingers curled gently around it, even in sleep. The drone recorded the moment, a human and an alien child holding hands beneath a broken world. That image would soon circle every colony, every starport, every ship across both empires, and no one would ever see war the same way again. The next dawn on Rax 5 was pale and quiet. The warships that had once thundered across the sky were gone, leaving only drifting smoke and the faint hum of ruined machines. Inside the collapsed metro tunnel, Admiral Marcus Hale woke to the gentle sound of breathing. The cubs were still asleep, their tiny forms curled up beside the fading fire. For a brief second, he forgot there was a war. Then his communicator beeped. He lifted it carefully so the sound wouldn't wake the children. Static filled the air, followed by a calm female voice. Admiral Hale, this is Command Alpha. We've received your signal. Stand by for extraction. Marcus closed his eyes in relief. Understood. Commander Raiden turned from the tunnel entrance. Finally, but sir, what about them? He glanced at the cubs. Marcus hesitated. We bring them. Raiden blinked. Sir, with respect, the fleet won't allow. They'll have to. Marcus's tone was quiet but unshakable. If humanity still has rules that forbid saving children, then maybe it isn't worth fighting for anymore. The extraction a few hours later. The low roar of engines echoed above. A human dropship descended through the smoke, its lights cutting through the haze. Dust swirled around as it landed near the tunnel mouth. The cub startled awake, frightened by the noise. Marcus knelt, whispering gently, It's all right. You're safe now. As he stepped into the open, the crew inside froze at the sight. An admiral of the Human Federation walking through the ruins, carrying alien children in his arms. One engineer dropped his helmet in shock. The pilot stammered, Sir, are those— Yes, Marcus interrupted, and they're coming with us. He climbed aboard. The cubs huddled close to him, trembling. Marcus held them tighter. When the ship lifted off, he looked down through the cracked viewport. The city of Rax 5 faded beneath him like a ghost. But he didn't notice the satellite cameras orbiting high above, recording every frame, every breath. The broadcast hours later, the footage exploded across both sides of the galaxy. Human news networks replayed the video of their admiral cradling the enemy's children. Zorth media networks did the same, showing the same scene from their surveillance drones. Across colonies and fleets, silence spread before emotion erupted. Some humans called Marcus a traitor. Others called him a hero. Among the Zorth, soldiers stared at the image in disbelief. Civilians wept. For the first time in history, both species saw the same act and felt the same ache in their hearts. The trial. 3 days later, Marcus Hale stood before a tribunal aboard the flagship Resolute Dawn. The chamber was cold, lined with high officers and recording drones. His uniform was torn and stained. The presiding officer, Admiral Roth, looked at him sharply. Admiral Hale, do you understand the charges against you? Marcus nodded calmly. Yes, sir. Disobeying battle orders, harboring enemy offspring. Unauthorized mercy. A murmur rippled through the spectators. Unauthorized mercy. The phrase sounded absurd even to their own ears. Roth leaned forward. You risked operational secrecy. You endangered human soldiers to save alien young. Explain yourself. Marcus met his gaze. Because they were children, sir. Not soldiers, not threats, just scared, hungry children. Roth slammed his hand on the desk. That's not an answer. You jeopardized our position. Marcus's voice was steady. And you think victory justifies cruelty? We can conquer every planet in the galaxy and still lose ourselves. The room fell silent. He took a slow breath. If compassion is disobedience, then I'm guilty. But I will not apologize for being human. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the old war-hardened officers shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Admiral Venn, the Supreme Commander, stood. Her eyes were filled with something no one expected. Pride. Enough, she said quietly. Admiral Hale acted against orders. But he reminded us of who we are. She turned toward the Council of Admirals. He showed the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon is not fear. It's empathy. The gavel struck. All charges dismissed. The other side, across the stars in the Zorth War Council, chaos reigned. The leaders argued in roaring voices. General Karn shouted, They are manipulating us! Do not be deceived by one human stunt. Admiral Zora stood firm, slamming her tail against the ground. It was no stunt. That man risked his own life for our cubs. You call that manipulation? Arch-Commander Vareth rose slowly. His scales were dull with age, his eyes weary. We have fought humans for so long that we forgot why. Maybe it's time we remember. The chamber erupted again. You speak of surrender? Blasphemy. Our ancestors will curse you. Vareth raised his voice, shaking the air. Our ancestors would curse us more for killing children. Silence, he continued. For years we called humans beasts, but perhaps the beasts are the ones staring back at us in this room. His words echoed through the hall, chilling every heart present. Zora stepped beside him. It's not surrender. It's survival of the soul. The council fell silent. Decisions made that night would ripple across the galaxy forever. The turning point within weeks, ceasefire requests began appearing on encrypted channels. First small scout fleets stood down, then entire battalions refused to fire. On one border world, human soldiers and Zorth warriors faced each other across a scorched valley. Neither side moved for hours. Then a human soldier stepped forward, set his rifle down, and offered a bottle of water. A Zorth soldier blinked, lowered his weapon, and accepted it. Someone filmed it. The image spread. Soon entire divisions laid down their weapons, tired of hate. The governments on both sides resisted. They called it insubordination, but they couldn't stop it. Once compassion had touched the battlefield, no order could erase it. The meeting months later, a neutral station was chosen for peace talks. Echelon Prime, a fortress once built for war. On one side of the long steel table sat the human delegation, led by Admiral Venn. On the other side sat the Zorth Council, led by Arch-Commander Vareth and Admiral Zora. Between them stood the man who had changed everything, Marcus Hale. He wore no weapons, no medals, only a plain officer's coat. When he entered the hall, the entire room stood. Even the Zorth soldiers, trained never to show respect to an enemy, lowered their heads slightly. Vareth spoke first, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. Admiral Hale, the cubs you saved, they live. Their parents asked me to tell you, thank you. Marcus's eyes softened. Then it was worth it. Zora leaned forward. You broke the cycle, human. Not with bullets, but with kindness. Marcus looked at both sides. No, we broke it together. Because someone had to start. The negotiations that followed lasted for days. Both sides shouted, argued, and cried. But beneath every word lay something new, a fragile thread of trust. And when the final agreement was signed, a new symbol was born. The symbol, it was simple. A logo that appeared on every peace document, every ship hull, every flag across two civilizations, a human hand feeding a small alien cub. The emblem of the unified treaty of life. It spread faster than any weapon ever built. Schools taught about it. Songs were written about it. The children of both species grew up learning not about victories, but about that moment on Rax Fiv, when one man chose mercy instead of vengeance. Epilogue. Years later. Years passed. The galaxy healed slowly. Colonies were rebuilt. Trade began again. The wounds of war did not vanish, but they no longer defined the future. On the outskirts of a small green planet, a monument stood, a sculpture of Admiral Marcus Hale kneeling, feeding 3 cubs beneath a broken sky. Every year, delegations from both species came to lay flowers there. One sunny afternoon, a young Zorth girl stood before the monument holding her father's hand. Her eyes glowed softly, full of curiosity. Papa, she asked, is it true? A human saved us? Her father, an old veteran with a missing arm, nodded. Yes, I was there. I saw it, the girl frowned. Why would he help us? We were the enemy, the veteran smiled faintly, because he didn't see enemies. He saw life. The little girl stared at the human statue, eyes wide with wonder. Was he brave? Her father looked up at the stars. Braver than anyone who ever fired a weapon. The legacy far away on Earth, Marcus Hale lived quietly in a small cabin by the ocean. He had retired long ago, refusing honors or politics. He spent his days fishing, reading, and writing letters he never sent. One evening, as the sun dipped below the water, his communicator pinged. It was an interstellar message. He opened it and smiled. On the screen appeared 3 young Zorth cubs, now grown, wearing ambassador uniforms. The smallest one, whose life he'd saved first, spoke in clear human language. Father Marcus, we just wanted to say, thank you. Because of you, our worlds share peace. Marcus felt tears fill his eyes. He laughed softly. You're welcome, little one. You're the proof that we can change. The signal ended. He looked at the horizon, whispering to himself, maybe this time, we got it right. The wind carried his words far across the waves. Above him, 2 moons rose together, one blue, one golden. shining side by side like the two civilizations they now symbolized. Final moment back on the monument planet. As dusk fell, millions of lights illuminated the night. Humans and Zorth gathered together, singing in both languages. The air shimmered with unity. An old voice spoke through every broadcast channel in the galaxy. Marcus Hale's final recorded message. Kindness is not weakness. Mercy is not surrender. The day we learn that is the day we stop being enemies. Feed the cubs, no matter whose they are.